is going to read for us. So if you could just read, we've only got one reading tonight, so Del, if you take it away, please.
Thank you. From Hebrews 11. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Indeed, by faith, our ancestors received approval. By faith, we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was made from things that are not visible. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to set out for a place that he was to receive as an inheritance, and he set out, not knowing where he was going. By faith, he stayed for a long time in the land he had been promised, as in a foreign land, living in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked forward to the city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. By faith, with Sarah's involvement, he received power of procreation, even though he was too old, because he considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one person, and this one as good as dead, descendants were born, as many as the stars of heaven and as the innumerable grains of sand by the seashore. All of these died in faith, without having received the promises, but from a distance they saw and greeted them. They confessed that they were strangers and foreigners on the earth, for people who speak in this way make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of the land that they had left behind, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better homeland, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God. Indeed, he has prepared a city for them.
Thank you, Del. If I didn't have the word up there, would you know what country that was?
It's two countries, technically.
There we go. And that's part of what I'm going to talk about today. So this week, or this time of the year rather, the World Council of Churches invites us to pray for the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. So 15th of August marks the liberation from Japanese colonisation and the beginning of the division which would later become the separation between North and South Korea. Korea is not alone in this. There have been many nations that have experienced the deep wounds of war, occupation and division. And in the middle of all this, we are asked or called to seek the promise of peace found in Jesus. When we worship together today, we're going to remember that true peace is not just the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice, trust, and hope. So I don't know whether many of you know the story of the Korean Peninsula. Does anybody know how it became North and South? Oh, Ree's got a... Oh, you've got a little inkling in the back of your head, haven't you?
I went down a rabbit hole on this recently.
I am going to tell you, so don't worry if you can't remember.
It's 1948. What was it? It was to do with the North wanting to be more like Russia and the South wanting to be more like the Allies.
Close. Close. You don't get a cigar, but you're close. So, for those of you who don't know, I don't know whether you can see, there is a thing on here, I know there is. That's what I wanted. So, this is the Korean Peninsula, this is Japan, here, this is China, and this is Russia, okay? Just the context. So it borders Russia, it borders China, and it's just over the sea from Japan. Now, Korea as a whole has had a long history of being taken over by people, but from 1910 to 1945, it was taken over by Japan. So Japan colonised it, and they used a lot of Koreans in Japan to help rebuild Japan. I mean, I'm not going to use the word slave, but it's akin to that. They were told that they had to come over and they had to help Japan with the war efforts. And then, just as Japan were getting ready to surrender, the USSR, as it was then, for those of you who are too young, that's what Russia used to be called, I can't remember, USSR anyway. The whole idea was that the Allies, which included the USSR actually at that time, they were against Austria and Germany, and the USSR and the USA were fighting against Japan. And on a certain day, which is this week, or just gone this week, is the anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing. So for those of you who don't know, just shortly before Japan were due to surrender, the USA dropped a nuclear bomb on the city of Hiroshima, and I think it was 2 days later on Nagasaki as well. Because there were so many Koreans in Japan and Hiroshima at that time, around 20,000 Koreans actually died as an immediate hit on Hiroshima. That's a lot of people in the scheme of how many people died in Hiroshima, and they're still reaping the wounds, shall we say, from that bombing. So on the 2nd of September 45, which was the end of the World War II in this area, although it finished in Europe before, the USSR and the USA decided to split Korea on the 38th parallel. So there's a latitude, 38 latitude, and it decided to split it and say that anybody who was the Japanese in what is now North Korea would give themselves up to the USSR army, and anybody in lower of the 38th parallel would give themselves up to the USA army. So the USSR and the USA are working together, but they've split the country to say, you Japanese can go there, and you Japanese can give yourselves to this people. Unfortunately, what happened was the North became a little bit more communist, like Russia, and the South became a little bit more, the word's not liberal, but like the United States. So then they had a war of their own. From sort of 1950 to 1953, North Korea and South Korea were at war because they were trying to come up with a way of saying, no, we're going to unify the whole country. But because they had this split, the North was saying, well, it's going to be like this, and the South was saying, no, it's going to be like this. And this is how we've ended up with the two separate countries. And there's a line in the middle, and they call it the 38th parallel because it's on the 38 latitude. And even now, there is a zone surrounding that line where you cannot go. So it's a zone where there is still conflict, and people don't talk about this in normal society. We don't talk about the war that's actually still going on in Korea because they're still fighting for this reunification. Now, when I saw about that the World Council of Churches was asking us to pray for peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula, I thought that was really interesting because for me, I'm not a political person, but the idea that these two countries can actually be one after all this time is something that I think is very, very, very far away because they have completely different outlooks. They have completely different political ways. Now, this is just an example of one area of the world where this is happening. This has happened in lots of places, and particularly after the Cold War, when places like Czechoslovakia split into the Czech Republic and Slovakia, where other areas, West and East Berlin, all of these places were kind of affected by this kind of iron curtain that was drawn. Now, we're asked to pray for this reunification. We're asked for the people that are there who have family and relatives in the other side. have peaceful talks when they can't even cross the border to get there in the first place. There's a lot of trust there, and we're expected to kind of pray to get this to happen. Now that makes me feel a little bit hopeless, a little bit lost, a little bit small and insignificant. Now in today's Old New Testament reading, we're reading from Hebrews, aren't we? There is a Luke gospel, but I wanted to focus on the Hebrew gospel. It's talking about faith, and it's talking about Abraham. And Abraham was a man of immense faith. And one of the reasons he was a man of immense faith is because he did, time and time and time again, what God told him to do without questioning it, without saying, oh, I'm not really sure about that. He just did it. And in the story that we hear today, it's the story where Abraham is being told to go to this land that he's never heard of, that he doesn't know anybody about, he doesn't know anybody there, but he's told to go with his wife Sarah. And Abraham is looking at God and saying, I can't remember if it's in this one or the previous one, but look, I've got nothing to leave anybody to. I've got no descendants, I haven't got any children, I'm basically going to have to leave it to the child of the slave woman that's in my house. And God says, no, it's okay. I'm paraphrasing, okay. But God says, no, it's okay, because you will have more descendants than the stars in the sky. Now at this point, if you were, let's say they were 80 years old, just to put a number on it, if you were 80 years old and you're going to have loads of descendants, don't worry about it. How much faith would you have that that was going to happen? Probably not a lot. Does Abraham turn around and say, don't be silly, that's a stupid thing to say? No, he says, all right, okay, thank you very much, we'll go to this land that we don't know anything about. And Sarah is crying and laughing, but not because she thinks it's funny, but because she's amazed that this is going to happen to her, that she is going to be able to have children when she's never had children before. In the world we live in today, we have mobile phones, we have the internet, we have maps, we have other people, we have lots of people that we know about. If we were told, if I told you all now, off your pop to, I don't know, Llantrisant. Let's all go to Llantrisant. Some of you would go, well, where's Llantrisant? I don't know where that is. I'll just look this up. Oh yeah, I know where it is now. I can get a bus there, I can get a train there. And you can work out exactly how to get there. So that kind of trust, and I guess we're still trusting in the internet, which is sometimes dodgy. But you've got all that information there. And you have to remember that back then, they didn't have any of this. They were literally going blind into a place that they knew nothing about. And as we know, Sarah and Abraham did go on to have children. Some very, very important children. As we know with the story, for example, of Isaac, and Abraham's faith is tested numerous times in the Bible. I mean, look it up. I didn't, but how many times Abraham was tested? It is a lot. How much of our faith do we put in God? Of our day-to-day lives? How much do we say, I don't really know what I'm doing now, I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to wait for God to sort it out? Some of us might hope for that in certain situations. Please, God, help me out in this situation. But I think from our day-to-day lives, we don't really say, I'm going to leave this in the hands of God, and whatever God decides is what I'm going to do. But this is what the gospel reading is telling us to do today. It's telling us to put our faith in God. It's telling us to ignore kind of everything else that's going on, and to just trust that whatever is said and whatever hope and promises that we're given will be the things that are right for us. I find it very hard to have faith that wars will end and that there will be world peace. I like to think I have faith that we have learned from our past mistakes. We certainly seem to have learned from dropping nuclear bombs on places, because we haven't done that for many years. But does it feel like we're almost on the brink of it occasionally? Do I have faith that no one's going to push a big red button at some point? I certainly don't have faith that somebody over there isn't, wherever America is. So what can we do as our small, tiny ants on this world do to help situations like that? And we can name a whole other load of places where stuff like this is going on. Obviously, Ukraine and Russia at the moment, and Palestine and Israel, the Congo. There's many, many places in the world that are still at war. What I said at the beginning was that true peace is not just an absence of conflict. Just because there's no war doesn't mean that there is peace. It needs to have the presence of justice, of trust, and of hope as well. How much do you trust God in your decisions? How much should you trust God in your decisions? I have some questions that we're going to do, which, as is me leading the gathering, they might be controversial. The first one: should countries be allowed to hold nuclear bombs? It's not controversial, is it? There's a bit of an idea at the moment of nuclear armament and those people who are gearing themselves up just in case. So just have a brief discussion on that, because we could have completely different opinions. The other question is, how do we expect people in conflict to have faith when all around them is in ruin? And the third question is, how can we use our faith to help spread some light to those in darkness? So those are the questions that we're going to have a discussion around. It's now 5 to 8. We're going to split into 3 groups, I think. So we'll have one group kind of around there, maybe with Del. Can you stay around there with kind of Andy? G, could you maybe take a group into the back or into the area, and then I'll take a group kind of down here. So feel free to go wherever you like. It's not a popularity contest of the gathering pastoral leaders. But if nobody comes to me, I'll be very upset. And I'm afraid I have to say goodbye to those of you online. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you get to discuss these questions with somebody in your life. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.